Concept art is some of the earliest look that we will see in the development of a piece of media, in this case Subnautica. And while we're waiting for news about the next game to drop, I figured we would take a look at some of the concept art for both Subnautica and Below Zero to see if we can find some concepts that weren't implemented or different design choices, and see if maybe we can predict some things we might see in the next game. In this video, I want to take a look at some of the different plant designs and creature designs to maybe determine what we can expect from Subnautica 2. So let's check it out. To start with, we're going to take a look at the official screenshot that has been released for Subnautica 2, because we can already see some cool creature things here and compare them to what we see in some of the other concept art to see if we can get a direction or a feel for how they might design some of these things. So starting off, we do have these winged creatures over here with the floating eyeball. Those just seem like they're probably a small fauna creature that we can probably see all over the place in some of the shallower areas. The big one here is obviously the shark. It looks like it kind of has a glowing blue mouth, and we've got some bright, vibrant colors on it, which is pretty cool because a lot of the, especially shallow creatures, the bigger ones weren't as colorful. So it looks like they're definitely looking into playing with some more color for some of the larger creatures, which could lead to some pretty cool creature designs. Next, we have these weird open mouth creatures. They seem like they're kind of similar in design to the newt fish that was introduced in Below Zero, where they kind of have a mouth that will open up and they can use it to catch their prey. Both of these, they kind of have different shaped mouths. This one looks like it has 4 petals, whereas this one's like 2 big lips.
Fucking Christ. It's making me question things about myself. Smash.
It would definitely be interesting to be able to see more creature interactions. You have some of that in Subnautica. When some of the larger creatures get together, they will fight each other. Stalkers will eat other fish. So it'll be kind of cool to see if there's more of a live feel in the ecosystem of some of the different creatures feeding off each other and interacting in certain ways. It would also be cool to see some more symbiotic relationships. Maybe these ones are only found near the giant shark things and they feed off of the leftover bits left behind. When this big shark thing gets its meal and decides to chomp down on something, you got these that'll be swimming around and feeding off what's left. That could be kind of cool to see, give it a more live ecosystem feel. And then in my last video for everything we knew about Subnautica 2, a lot of people pointed out there is this creature in the background over here. It is kind of hard to make out. The screenshot I had before was fairly small. I ran this one through an upscaler so I could get a better view of it. And the dev Obraxis in an interview has actually kind of confirmed that there is some sort of large creature, crab-like creature back here.
So there's nothing hidden in this, right? Like there's nothing that you know of that's hidden, right?
There's a little something potentially hidden in there. I don't know if it'll make it to the final game, but there's a little something, yeah, on the left-hand side that if you look really closely, you might be able to recognize. But you'll have to kind of, X-Files zoom in and enhance and stuff.
I don't have an enhance button, unfortunately. Hang on a second. Are these eyes? Oh, shit! I can see that clear as day now that I'm staring at it.
I don't know what you mean.
So anyways, there's something, apparently, possibly, right here. Looks like some kind of crab thing or something. I see 2 eyeballs, for sure, I think. But he won't confirm it. That's totally fine. Break my heart. Smash it to pieces. It's cool.
I don't know if it's, because it looks like maybe these here are the eyeballs, and then you have some different legs and things kind of sticking out, which makes me feel like it's maybe a hermit crab type creature, and this is actually its shell. And that we might get to see those in the game where you'll be cruising along and think you're just passing by a giant rock, and all of a sudden it hops up and starts crawling across the ground or attacks, which could be a very interesting interaction depending on how camouflaged the shells actually are and how unique they look. Because if the shells all are identical, like one model, obviously you'll start to be able to pick them out when you see that very particular rock that it's a giant hermit crab. So hopefully they have plans for this to make it into the game, because that seems pretty cool to me. Have a giant hermit crab, and hopefully they can have them where they have a varied enough shell that they don't all look the same, and that they can actually just kind of jump out and surprise you sometimes, because everybody loves a good Subnautica jump scare. So that's what we have for this actual image from the game. So now we're going to look at some of the concept art pieces for some of the plants and creatures that are left over from Subnautica and Below Zero, and some that are just different designs for creatures that actually did make it into those games. But we can see kind of how they go about designing and choosing different features for their different creatures. And maybe we can start piecing together what some things are going to actually look like in this next game. We are going to be looking at concept art from both Subnautica and Below Zero, so there are going to be some that are specific to a cold environment. And I actually think it would be kind of cool if there is a Arctic zone in Subnautica 2, maybe not to the scale that it was in Below Zero, but have an actual area of the map that contains cold zones with some of the cold creatures that they haven't used, while most of the map is more reminiscent of Subnautica 1. I think that could be really cool, but I have no idea what their plans are for the map, how large it's going to be, or if they have any plans on incorporating that, but we will be looking at concept art from both games. We're going to start with this piece right here. One of the things I wanted to look at is actually this squid creature right here. I think it has a very unique design that we haven't really seen in Subnautica so far. We do have a lot of larger creatures that have tentacles like this, like the sea dragon or the sea emperor, but it would be cool to see some more squid-like creatures, and we'll see some more concept art images later, but particularly octopus-like creatures with tentacles that attack and things like that. I feel like we don't have a whole lot of that in Subnautica yet, and that could be a really cool direction to take some of the creature designs. But this picture as a whole is pretty interesting to look at. I'm not sure what it would be if this is also some kind of hostile creature, much like an antlion, the little bugs that dig the tunnels in this, not tunnels, but they dig the cavities in the sand and they wait for ants to fall in and they eat them. Also kind of similar to the Sarlacc pit from Star Wars. I believe that was also inspired by antlions. But that could be an interesting creature idea where there are going to be a lot of very useful resources kind of in the center of the pit, and you have to be careful because if you trigger it, you might have a creature in the center pop up out of the ground and, you know, try and eat your face or your vehicle. I just kind of like how this picture looks. It looks like it's full of amoebas and eggs and different corals, but the way it just kind of goes into the center reminds me of some kind of antlion or Sarlacc pit type of monster that might jump out and give you a good scare the first time you're exploring the planet. And speaking of the tentacled-like creatures, more like octopus, we have a very interesting design here where you see these translucent-like tentacles. Looks like they're coming out of a cave, trying to grab the player here as they're swimming away. Here we can see that there are 6 tentacles. Obviously, we can't tell if these are all part of the same creature or if they're their own individual things that just like to group together. But I think having more grabby tentacle-like things that can scare the player are a fantastic idea for creatures for the next Subnautica game. Make it feel a lot more unique from what we've seen so far. But other than these tentacles, we also have these funky-looking creatures here. And at first glance, you might look at them and think that they're just a plant, but they actually seem to have these legs down here for them to crawl around. And then you have one that has actually extended its flower where the player is going to go see. And I could just see this flower here actually either being a mouth where they use that to catch their prey, and this as like a giant hand. You might be swimming over them to try and look at something, and slowly they'll just kind of be extending this thing out, and before you know it, they launch it out and grab you. Don't think we've really seen much like this in the Subnautica games so far. I haven't played all the way through Below Zero, so if there are some of these creatures that have been adapted into Below Zero that I just haven't encountered yet, let me know in the comments below. But I'll just be reacting to the ones that I'm not familiar with in the series so far, and we'll go from there. And then there's one more good picture that shows some type of tentacles similar to the other ones like I was talking about. As you can see here, the diver's actually in a cave, and in the holes of the cave are just various tentacles. So whereas the other one looked like it was one large creature with multiple tentacles, These definitely seem like they are individual worm tentacle-like creatures that will accost the player as they try and swim through a cavern. This will make having to go through caves already more of a nightmare because it's very easy to get turned around and lost. And when you're running low on oxygen, trying to find a way out of the cave can become a little sticky situation. Now add in a bunch of grabby hands that are always trying to slow you down, and you're in for a good time. Also, caves like this in general will also make a lot of people uncomfortable. You already have people who are terrified of Subnautica because they have thalassophobia, which is just a fear of like deep water and the unknown in the water. Having a cave full of holes like that would also trigger a lot of people that have tryptophobia, which is a disgust or fear of things that have like patterned holes, such as like honeycombs or like these seed pods in these pictures, or even sponges. So having to swim through a cave that's not only covered in holes, small holes like that, but that actually have creatures that will reach out of them and try and grab you could definitely cause some interesting moments. Here we have a below zero concept art piece with these giant flowers growing in the Arctic zones above ground. One, I don't know how the player ended up here. It's probably just drawn there for scale.
Help me! Help me!
But these could also be flower pods that were designed as to provide warmth for the player before they went with, you know, those weird eyeball plant looking things, and instead have like these trees, and there's probably, you know, some resources maybe up on the tops of these, although I'm unsure how the player is expected to actually reach these, and that may be the main reason that they haven't used them. Again, I haven't played through all of Below Zero, so if these are in the game, you know, let me know. We also have these cool blown over frozen tree shelter things. Again, it looks like maybe this is designed to provide the player with warmth, and I could see these being in a zone where there is a severe wind that is blowing, and the player kind of has to hop between these different shielded areas that provide some warmth in order to actually cross the expanse. I'm not really hoping that there's a whole lot of land exploration in Subnautica 2. Below Zero had a little bit too much. I feel like the amount of land exploration in the original Subnautica was fine. So I do expect there to still be some in the next game. And again, I don't even know if the next game's going to have like an Arctic area of the map, although I do think that would be kind of cool to implement, since we do have the two histories so far. We have the regular Subnautica, and then we have a cold one. It could be kind of cool to see Subnautica 2 actually have a combined map zone that contains both the majority of it being traditional ocean Subnautica feel, but maybe with like a small ice cap that you can go visit and have to do some certain things on, where you can see like some more cold adapted creatures and landscapes and plant life. We have another plant idea from Below Zero. I think this one definitely looks interesting. It kind of reminds me of the blown over trees with the warm spots that we had seen previously, whereas these are actual flowers on the ice, and the bulb folds over either just due to their large weight or the high winds in the area, and that provides that pocket of warmth that the player can actually, looks like the player is trying to go into the flower down here where they can actually get warm. It is possible these flower trees are the same things that we saw the concept art of before, where the player was standing on top of one, and when the wind picks up, they kind of blow over and create a little warm spot here to keep the main part of the plant alive, while the trunk / stem of the plant is designed to survive the cold. This here is an early concept art for some of the twisty bridges, probably the deep twisty bridges by the looks of it, but I wanted to look at this creature that is designed here, whether this is meant to be just like a simplified design since it is a concept art, or if that's actually how they kind of envision the creature looking. I think it's very interesting to see with such like a flat but long creature, kind of mixed in with lots of colors along the side as it's swimming. I could just see these colors changing as it moves, giving it almost like a rainbow shimmer along the sides.
I got Skittles because it got a rainbow on it.
Okay.
And I got the soup cake. It's the be who you are for your pride.
this is my Pride Month. Why did you do this? Why are you doing this?
What? Because you're gay.
Okay.
As it kind of glides through the water, you can see in this drawing they actually have a couple of them here, and I think that could be a very interesting creature idea. It's not on the top of my list for things I would want to see, but it is definitely unique. Gives a very centipede-esque vibe for a creature for Subnautica. Here we have an entire biome concept. It looks like it was fairly early, sketched in just black. It's a biome with environmental hazards. Basically, you have like these thermal vent pillars, but the idea of the biome, titled Sea of Pillars, is that the volcanic pressures beneath will actually launch large rocks up into the air, but up off the ground through the water. And as you can see here, they have a large submarine reminiscent of the Cyclops trying to traverse the Sea of Pillars while it's in danger of giant flaming boulders being launched up from the volcanic activity below. This seems like it could be a very cool biome idea. We know they already have like thermal vents and things like that they have worked on. They even have in Subnautica like those erupting vent things, but I don't believe any of those actually launched any like boulders through the air or anything like that. And it actually looks like, based off the description here, it says a series of rock pillar that propelled by volcanic pressure or whatever, with a little smiley face down here, little smiley face. And so if you look, it's not even just like it's a vent that launches a rock out. It's like the entire pillar itself launches out like a rocket. And I think that could actually be very fun to encounter if they do decide to implement something like that in Subnautica 2. This next one is one that I am desperately hoping to see makes it into Subnautica 2, and it is known as the single cell landscape. Essentially, it is going to be a deep sea biome where the seascape is covered by a single life form. I am assuming that it is, like, just by the looks of the picture here, that it would be a single cell life form that is working together, that essentially works like a slime mold or a hive that work together. And the idea of this concept is that they would attack light sources. So if you are traveling through the single cell biome and you turn on a light source of any kind, whether that be from the main sub like the Cyclops, or even just the sea moth or a handheld light, that it'll actually trigger the light sensitive single cell organisms on the seafloor that are covering everything to latch out and attack you. It would make it a very terrifying biome to have to try and traverse, because I'm assuming it would be deep where there's not any light, especially if they're light sensitive, which means like if you're wanting to pass through safely, you're gonna have to do it with the lights off. Whether or not they offer a technology solution for that, such as night vision or something that you can turn on to be able to see without a direct light source, or if you just kind of have to go in mostly blind while it's dark, using your light very sparingly to kind of find your way. I think this right here seems like a fantastic addition that should definitely be in consideration for Subnautica 2. I even had put a poll up on my channel on the community tab, and this was the most voted for one, if I remember correctly. A lot of people really like the idea of the single cell landscape. It's definitely one that will up the horror factor of that landscape as you're trying to travel through without triggering the life form with any kind of light source. This is another environmental hazard biome, or I don't know if it's specific to a biome or if it's just something that you could see in other biomes as just an environmental hazard. My understanding of reading the handwriting there is the Cyanian rocks, and it reads, like in the myth, the two continental rocks collide when the ships try and pass. In order to get through safely, you have to foil it. It's either foil or fool, that may be a tiny O. Either way, essentially you have these giant continental rocks, which means they're massive, and anytime that you try and bring a ship through, they will collide in on themselves and try and crush you, or just end up blocking your path. While I'm not sure how realistic it would be to implement something like this into the game, I could see them using architect technology as what's controlling these large continental rocks and it's more used as like a defense system for anything that is large, trying to pass through the rocks. It will close them almost like a giant door, killing or preventing access. So I could definitely see it being implemented that way, essentially just being powered by the architect technology. Other than that, naturally, I'm not sure how that would work. If it were just like a natural formation of, oh, anytime you get close, these things close. If they were constantly just like opening and closing on their own, then I could kind of see it being something of a more natural phenomenon without having to use like architect tech to power it. But you wouldn't be able to have the full idea here of as soon as the ship comes up, they try and collide into the ship, and that you have to fool it to get by. But definitely an interesting idea. I'm not sure if this one will make it. I think it'll be cool if it does, but I'm not holding out hope that they're going to implement this one just yet into Subnautica 2. Here we have another concept idea for a hazardous zone known as the Black Field. In this terrain, you essentially have just thick black ink that clouds the waters and makes it very hard to see as you're traveling through. And according to this, it says a terrain that spews out intense ink-like substance.
Oh, you guys made me.
To undermine visibility. So having reduced visibility makes you vulnerable to collision and attack. Also, certain creatures thrive in the ink. I could see you having to, in order to easily traverse this zone, needing like a sonar, like the sonar system on the sub, so that you can see things through the ink while you're traveling through, because visibility is so limited. That's definitely an idea I feel like they can and more than likely will implement in Subnautica 2, but we're gonna have to wait and see. And then this one could be a very interesting thing, because I can see this being used in two different ways. So these are the concept for super jet streams. Basically think from Finding Nemo, the East Australian current, where in the ocean you're gonna come across these network of super fast currents that are blowing through, and it even says here that the currents can send you or your sub to an unknown place or directly damage you from debris. I think this is a cool idea, and especially if you have a very large map in Subnautica 2, this could essentially be a superhighway traveling to different places.
You're riding it, dude!
But the player must know and remember, like, oh, if I go to this particular jet stream, it'll take me here, or take me along this path, and if I can drop out at a certain time and end up where I want to be, while also being dangerous. So it's not just like it's just a fast travel system, pick a highway and it takes you there. You are running the risk of the debris actually damaging you, destroying your ship along the way, and kind of leaving you stranded somewhere. This could be a very, very cool idea for the game, especially if it has a large map, because as you discover more and you venture out to these places, you can use these jet streams to your advantage. But while things are still unknown, you're taking a big risk jumping into one of these and not knowing where you're going to end up. I hope they can implement something like this in Subnautica 2. I'm not sure how that works with it, being an underwater environment in the game and the game engine, and if it can handle these higher current areas where you can just kind of end up slipping into one and being taken off somewhere. But I'm assuming if any engine can do it, Unreal 5 can do it. And if it can, I really hope that they implement something like this, so you can actually kind of map out the jet stream network, and like I said, use it almost as like a super highway to traverse the map quickly if you're wanting to go from one place to another, and you're certain that that's the jet stream that takes you there. This is the last of the early concept environmental hazards that I've seen, and I think this one's quite interesting. It's called the Pillars of Silence.
Within the sound of silence.
A massive field of sinkholes that send off a pillar of acid. Animals that get caught melt to the bone in minutes. The bones are suspended for ages. So you're literally have these large pillars of acid where if a fish swims in, they get nuked, they get turned into bone. It even says here, but if you can find ways to withstand the acid, what special treasures or creatures await in the sinkholes? So that is implying, much like the lead-lined suit to be able to survive radiation in Subnautica, this time you'd be able to build like an acid-proof suit, which would allow you to explore these acid sinkholes. Now the question is, what's causing the acid? Because to me, that just screams that there's creatures in these holes, and they're the ones spewing the acid, and you might not like what you find when you go down there. Who knows? And then I wanted to include a few of these screenshots. These were concept ideas for Margaret, not sure how exactly you pronounce her name, but her special base that you come across in Below Zero. The main reason I kind of wanted to showcase some of these is it could be a pretty cool addition to Subnautica 2 to allow the player to decorate their own bases in a similar way. Whereas if we find materials from certain creatures, or maybe are able to actually kill leviathans, that we can gain access to crafting just decor items, just to really give our bases, or the interior of our bases, like really cool designs. I like this one that has the giant Reaper skull just on the floor attached to the wall. I think later designs it's a little bit smaller and they raise it up a little bit, but I like the sheer size of this one right in the middle as a showcase of your base. And I think that could be a cool way, especially with the multiplayer feature of Subnautica 2, to allow players to really deck out the base building aspect. So when they have players come into their games, they can show off maybe some of the achievements they've made so far in the game, like, oh, I've killed a such and such leviathan. And you know that's true because I've got the skull right there. That could be a cool thing to implement. We will see kind of what direction the devs are planning to go with that one. I also think it would be kind of cool if we get to upgrade our subs and technology, such as like the prawn suit, things like that, whatever the equivalent will be in Subnautica 2, with creature parts, much like Marguerite does with hers, where she has like the giant claw mandible thing on her prawn suit as one of the arm attachments. Even if it's only like a cosmetic thing to make it easier to differentiate vehicles when you're playing in multiplayer, I think that could be a cool thing to implement in the game and give players really good chance just to kind of show off the way that they want to show off. This here is a second example of different ways that we can actually decorate our bases if they do allow for us to use harvestable materials from creatures. So whereas in the big multi-purpose room that we were just looking at with the giant skull, these ones you can see it's basically like a backbone ribcage table. Not entirely sure what this tube is made out of. Probably don't want to know, but I still think, as you can see, like this would give us a lot more customization if we could actually build things like this in Subnautica 2 in our own bases to really give them a personal feel, a more gritty feel, and feel like we're actually surviving off of what we find on the planet and what we're actually able to harvest. So I'm really looking forward to the base building aspect, to see what they bring into the base building and how they're going to let players actually build bases in the next game, hopefully giving us a little bit more freedom to make our own custom bases exactly how we want to. I know a lot of people thoroughly enjoy building bases in Subnautica. It's got a decent enough base building system that allows you to do quite a bit, but it is also limited in a lot of ways, and decorating the inside is also very limited to just a few plants and basically what you can find. So I'm hoping to see some more customization options, especially some more darker in theme ones like these. And then in this one, we're given just a few more examples of that dark gritty theme of being able to kind of customize things. Obviously, this is still concept art for Marguerite's base and how she's been surviving, but I'm really hoping that they will give us a little bit more dark aesthetic type things to kind of showcase in the game. Like, oh, I've been here a long time. Look at how run down and everything my base is, and I'm just here trying to survive. This is the other example I was talking about where they kind of, it seems like they raised the skull up a little bit, put it up more towards the ceiling, and Gave her like a little workbench here. This still works. This is still cool. I just like the previous concept one where the skull was much larger, took up like half the room, but was really a stunning centerpiece for showcasing like, hey, I took down a Reaper. Look how big its head was. We do also have some different character model designs that they've kind of been working on. Some of these have probably been changed or been used. Like this is Margaret, and some different character designs for her. We also see, I'm assuming this is also Margaret traveling with the companions, so we can kind of see some of the different character designs. These are all the same person, obviously. You can kind of see them put together more here, but there's also a few designs for characters that I don't think have really been seen, or like just different aesthetic ideas for characters, which may actually give us kind of a sneak peek as to what the character might, like the player character might look like in Subnautica 2. Like here we have Altera Corporation employee uniform. So here's where they were actually kind of designing what the Altera company uniform should be. And they have some pretty cool ideas here, to be completely honest. I do like a couple of these. Obviously, purple's my favorite color, so I like this purple one. But I also just like the silhouette and shape of this one. I think that's a pretty cool uniform design for Altera employees. Here you can see, I'm assuming this is kind of an early edition of Riley. He looks pretty similar to Riley. And then we have this lady whose face we've seen in pictures in Subnautica, but nobody really knows who she is character-wise or anything. You also have what looks like is probably Robin, but then an Asian man. I have a feeling if we don't have a custom character creator, we might be playing as one of these two. Here you can see like they still kind of working on refining this face, and then the one that ultimately becomes Robin. Here you can even see like a couple different like face shapes and styles that they attempted to go with for the male character that we ended up getting. Would not be surprised if one of these faces are actually used for the player character and the player model in Subnautica 2, or even if we're given multiple options, since it is multiplayer and they want people, I'm assuming, to look unique in each game, like stand out from each other a little bit, or if there's just like a choice of players that you can choose from, or something along those lines for the player character stuff. But I have a feeling one of these might give us kind of a sneak peek at what we might expect for the player character to look like in Subnautica 2. So in this piece, the one thing that I find very interesting, other than the turtle-like creatures that you can see here, which I think are pretty cool, we could definitely use some more turtles, but the fact that this one is frozen into an ice pillar in the middle, the way that it is, and the way that this pillar here is kind of drawn, it seems like these like pillars of ice are actually like flash frozen instantly for whatever explanation they have of something coming through the ice that causes it to freeze rapidly, making it a very hostile zone where you could just be cruising along in your Seamoth and one of these pillars will strike down and striking you, destroying your Seamoth, or even hitting you or trying to like pin you in place. I think that's a very interesting idea. I'm not sure, like I said, what mechanism they would use to explain why these ice spears form so rapidly in the water. But I do think it's a very cool concept. And if we do have some sort of small ice zone in Subnautica 2, this could be a very, very cool thing for them to implement. Very reminiscent of the Sea of Pillars idea, whereas in that zone, volcanic crushers were launching pillars of rock up at you. In this zone, as you're trying to swim through, shards of ice are rapidly forming from above, trying to stab you, basically. In this piece that we have here, I really liked these ray-type creatures. They don't have the long tails like the rays that we're used to seeing, but I do like their design, and especially the colors of these, where they look almost like they have an entire cosmos in their brain. I think these would be a very cool type of design to implement for some creatures in the next game. We also have some down here. Obviously they're kind of hard to tell because they were made very small. They look a lot more squid-like or different creatures with tentacles of some kind, but these could also just be a quick depiction of like the ghost rays or things that we saw from Subnautica, and they may not entirely be something unique. But these ones up here are definitely very interesting looking, and I would love to see some more of those. We have a couple of pieces for various zones that show these type of creatures kind of crawling among the rocks. And I don't really think it's anything that we've seen a whole lot of so far, where they have a tail so it looks like they can swim, but they also have at least 4 legs, and they like to climb up the rocks, probably looking for food, but will not be afraid to take off and swim because they do have a pretty good tail going there. I think we have some other pieces later that maybe will give us a little bit better look of those, but you can just kind of see them littered throughout, crawling on these rocks. And I think that's a very interesting creature design that I would definitely like to see some more of. Here is another image of those creatures. This one's a little closer to the camera, so you can kind of see. I don't even really know how to describe it. They have 4 crab legs, a nice little tail, and some kind of finned face. They do seem like they're very hydrodynamically designed to be able to move quickly through the water, but prefer mostly to kind of cling to these pillars, probably looking for their preferred food source. Would definitely be interested to see more creatures like this that are both ones that can crawl on the wall, on surfaces, walk on the ground, but can also take off and swim very quickly if startled, or even aggressively if the player gets too close. And if they are planning on doing more crab things like that giant hermit crab thing we were looking at before, I think trying to implement more crab-like creatures that can also swim is a good direction for them to head in. Now, I really like the creatures in this piece. They have a very creepy feel to them. They definitely seem hostile the way they're looking at the player, but something about like those big fins on their heads and the multiple eyes staring at you as they're kind of swimming towards you, and it even looks like they might have some pinchers.
Not to mention the pincers.
Yeah, I reckon that too.
Some little fingies for them to latch on and attack the player. So they seem like they are a hostile creature, in my opinion. And if you get too close to them while going through this zone, it seems like they would definitely be willing to hunt you down and have you for a snack. I think these are very cool, even though they are just kind of like a rough sketch and we don't get a whole lot of detail on them. Cool looking creatures for sure. This piece, we have a mushroom tree, pretty similar to what we end up seeing in Subnautica, but up top we have this very interesting looking ray. The tail almost looks like it's twisted, but it has like these big fins flowing off of it. I think it's just pretty cool design for just some of the non-hostile ray equivalent creatures that we could see swimming around. In this twisty tree one, which I think by itself is just a very cool piece, we have a couple creatures to look at. You have whatever the heck this thing is. I want to say like pink tadpole shark. You have a tadpole-like tail here. It appears to have a bubble on it, like a membrane. So I'm assuming that's all part of its head and that it's not just the pink, but it's hard to tell specifically what the final design of this creature would be, but it's definitely an interesting looking one. And at the bottom, we have these weird hollow triangles, diamonds. They have the main part of the body here with some like ocular balls up here or lights that they see by, but the majority of their body is like hollow with like a big diamond shaped fin. They kind of remind me of the fish from Subnautica, and I can't think of what it's specifically called, but where you grab it and it holds it by the side, because they kind of have those holes there, and that ultimately may have been what they were redesigned into. But I do like the angular sharpness of these with the glowing eyes. If they wanted to have something similar for Subnautica 2 that wasn't exactly the same as the one from Subnautica or too similar, I definitely think this is a cool route to go in order to kind of replicate that same thing. Here we have some more of these very similar looking things. They like to have those hollow holes, so we can kind of expect to see that, I'm sure, in some of the creatures in Subnautica 2, where they're going to have kind of like these empty spaces within the fish themselves, but they're all still connected. These also are very reminiscent of the ones in the final game that have the giant eye on them with the two handholds in them. I'm not sure what actually to call them. They're just holes. But these ones are a lot longer and snake-like on the end of them, with like a brain or an eyeball visible on top. I think we can definitely expect to see this design idea to still make it into Subnautica 2, where they really like playing with the empty space to create odd shapes for the creatures and not just having, like, say, a solid fish all the time. And I think that's pretty cool. These are supposed to be alien fish, so they don't have to look realistic. Play with the silhouette, play with the shape, come up with some really cool fish ideas. I'll be happy. This next one here that I'm about to show you is my absolute favorite piece of concept art that I found digging through the Subnautica wiki to find all of these images. I just hope you're prepared for it. It's going to blow your mind. All right, you ready for this?
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Boom. Subnautica. Very cold. Perfect. Right here. Perfect depiction of concept art right here. Love it. More of this, please. More of it. All of it just hand scribbled nonsense of an igloo on ice. Just saying Subnautica very cold. Perfect. Couldn't have asked for a higher resolution. I get it. This right here encapsulates all of below zero. Just Subnautica very cold. Now, I really like these creatures here because you can see them in the cave, that they actually attach to the ceiling of the cave using their tail and kind of hang like a bat, but then will also swim through. So even though you're underwater, it still feels like there's bats in a cave. I think this is a cool design. I'm not sure if these are actually in below zero or not, but if they are not, definitely take these, add them to some cave structures in Subnautica 2, and I'll be a happy camper. What the fuck? Now this creature here, I'm not sure specifically what I'm looking at, but it intrigues me. It intrigues me deeply. I'm assuming this is the front, being the head of it, just because of the way that these scales are angled and pointing, but the legs, the way that they are drawn, which I'm assuming these are like legs or hands, they seem to curve the wrong direction. You would expect them to like bend backwards towards the back tail end of the creature and not angle up and towards the head. But it is possible that the design idea for this creature is that those arms will grab onto a food source and kind of feed it into the mouth in the opening. I'm not sure, but it is definitely a very interesting creature design. Wish I could see a little bit more of it, but unfortunately, this is what we've got. So over here in this one, we have these funky looking creatures with like these trailing tentacles. They seem like they're small fish things swimming around. I do like the trailing tentacles. Subnautica doesn't have enough tentacles. Subnautica needs some more tentacles. That's all I'm gonna say. Way in the background, we also have this cool looking thing. Very, looks like segmented snake or striped in some way with a giant finned head, which I'm all for. Give us really exaggerated looking creatures. That's where Subnautica is really going to thrive. Here we kind of have a depiction of some of the tiger plant designs, but they also have some other cool looking plant designs that could still be implemented and used. So we're used to this spiky looking one. My favorite one is here. There's another piece that we have that shows these in action too, where these are essentially hooks that'll reach out to grab you. But you can definitely see they went through multiple ideas trying to design whatever this type of spike plant would be. And in fact, this one, number 10, almost looks like it has feet, like it kind of walks around just like a spiky rock, which could be very interesting. Here is a better image of that spike plant that I was telling you. This one's a little bit more refined. I don't know if these are in below zero or not. If not, that means they definitely made it a little further in development than some of the other designs from that page. But here you really get to see you have these tendrils that want to reach out and grab the player, and you can see the sheer size of these things. It looks like there is actually just a giant mouth here in the center, so I could see them grabbing the player and pulling you to the mouth to eat you, and you have to quickly attack, much like the bleeders when they attach themselves to you, and you gotta beat them off. You gotta get them off. You have to kill them. Is that better? We'll go with that. And so this plant's gonna grab you, try and drag you in, and you basically gotta beat it off. Kill it, you gotta cut it. Moving on. Here we have a combination of some crazy looking flora and fauna. Some of these are really twisted looking, and the only one of these that has actually been used is the Gabe's feather here, which is seen in the first Subnautica game. The rest of these are completely unused, and I honestly would love to see things like this implemented. So first off, we even have names for them here, which is pretty cool. So one is the bullyfish. So that's going to be this thing here, which is very creepy looking with all of its eyeballs, and it's got that little mouth in the center. And the way it looks like it's doing here is like the eyeballs, or maybe some of them that aren't eyes, are just like a sticky grabby thing. And they'll launch it out, grab their prey, and then they pull it into their mouth. That's a pretty creepy looking thing. Almost reminds me of like a tiny deep sea beholder from D&D. You can just imagine seeing a bunch of these things floating around trying to grab you. Yeah, no thank you. All right, and then two, we have an axe toll. Obviously, it's got like an axe-like tail here, which is assuming is where it gets the name, but it's just kind of a funky-looking designed fish here. Then for three, we have the bellhop, which is a cute name for this thing. Looks like its mouth is down here. You can see two versions of it here where they actually like push themselves off using their mouth neck, and then they'll land and they'll just look like a little mushroom on the sea floor. So you could swim up to one of these and be like, oh, let me go harvest this thing, and then it just like leaps at your face, which is that's a pretty cool idea and a cute name, the bellhop. Someone deserves a raise with that one. I like that one. Sad it didn't get implemented. Hopefully it's in 2. 4, we have the witch's grasp. These things are nightmarish. They remind me of the things from Alien, the face huggers. Oh no, those things are creepy. Creepy in a good way. I love it, but man, those ones are creepy. Just look at that.
Chocolate. I remember when they first invented chocolate. Sweet, sweet chocolate. I always hated it.
And then of course we have Gabe's feather. That's the one that actually is the only one of these that made it into the game. 6, we have the sea otter. Which one is 6? The sea otter. I don't like that. I don't like that. Am I supposed to just go up and get some milk off of the udder or something? Like, we're gonna move on from that one. 7 is the trapper, which is pretty cool looking. I really seem to like the creatures that they do that have multiple eyes. That always gives them more of a creepy feel than just like 1 or 2 like we're used to seeing. And these things, I don't even know what I'm looking at with them or how they work. Like I couldn't even guess how this thing would be hostile unless it's literally just sticky and you run the risk of it just like holding on to you if you run into one. But I love the design with all of the eyes. I hope we start seeing some more of that, go more crazy with the designs. Clearly they have put a lot of thought into designs like this that are more disturbing, and I want to see more of it in Subnautica 2. Make that ocean creepy as hell. Just creepy as hell. Everything's got eyes, everything's staring at you, everything's got teeth, everything's trying to grab you. Make it a nightmare. That would be fantastic. Thank you. 8, we have the spinnerfish. Just looks like it's jellyfish-like that spins through the air. It's a cute design. Not against that one whatsoever. 9 is the pianist. That's this thing here. Whether these are all fingers of the same creature, I'm unsure, but it just looks like fingers playing on a piano. So definitely an interesting choice. I could take it or leave it in the next one, but definitely not against anything that can, like I said, anything that can grab you or make things a little bit more difficult to traverse. And then finally, you just have the sea cone. This looks just like a standard cone-like creature. Again, maybe a bunch of eyes on top, and it looks like it can walk around on there. Seeing a bunch of these things just like slowly crawling across the ground, but not really posing any threat, could be interesting. Now, there are some designs for actual birds, more so than just like the little small flying ones that are there mostly for looks, but they were working on some bird designs which would be very interesting to implement. This one here, you can see it's the giant bird Lance, and it actually dives into the water to get fish on the surface of the ocean, much like we see birds do here on Earth. This could be a very interesting creature idea where if you're in their territory and you're just swimming along the surface of the water, that you're actually in danger of attracting these giant birds to come diving after you. It would add a little bit of suspense to the area. I think that's a pretty cool design to create some things that aren't just aquatic, but can still attack you in the ocean. So I like the idea of like a giant bird diving into the water after you as you're trying to swim along the surface. So not only are you in danger when you're way down in the depths with all the large deep sea creatures, but if you're just kind of cruising along at the surface, you still have dangers that you have to contend with. The other type of bird that they have here is the Nightwing Sky Ray here. I don't know if these were ever implemented, but it looks like, based off the size chart down here and the way that these hands are, very much designed to grab a human and take them away. They have a couple different design aesthetics for them. Personally, I like this one with the giant head crest and the extra claws, but I think those are a very cool creature that could make traversing any type of land that there is in Subnautica very dangerous, and you have to watch out for the skies. Make sure you don't get scooped up by a giant kite wing. Here are another quick depictions of how some various birds could hunt for fish in the water. These ones are obviously, instead of using their beaks, using their tails as a spear. Based off the size of this one with the peeper, these don't seem like they're quite as large, but there definitely could be larger variants that pose more of a threat to the player. Moving on from the birds, we have some fish. This here is the Bulldog Trapjaw. They have a couple different varieties of this. You can see it's pretty decent sized. Definitely poses a threat to a human. This thing looks like it would be terrifying with its... They have a couple versions with or without the raptorial jaws as it's described here. I'm always a big fan of the mandibles in the jaws. I think they make it look extra creepy. But here you can see if they remove the raptorial jaws, it still has a pretty creepy looking mouth. Look like it's gonna come try and just literally rip your face skin off of your body and wear it.
Oh my God.
At ease.
Oh my God.
I didn't think it was very realistic in the movie, and it turns out it's pretty realistic.
These here are the clown pinchers with their pinchers. I like the design of these things. They do kind of feel like amphibian type role that we don't really have a whole lot of in Subnautica so far. I'm not 100% sold on this final as like the final design for the creatures. A little bit tweaking, maybe giving them a second set of back legs instead of just the two pinchers in the front. I'm not really sure how else to really change them. I don't hate them, but I don't love them. Hopefully though, we will see some more amphibian-like creatures in Subnautica 2. Here are a couple more designs. They have a purple and a green one. These are kind of like amphibian type creatures. I feel like they kind of remind me of the sea monkey from Below Zero, but I like these a lot more. These look pretty cool. Maybe a lot less friendly than the sea monkeys. Probably don't steal your stuff, but probably more hostile. So here's an example of a predator I don't believe we have seen. I don't believe these were ever implemented, and based off just the size of these things in this depiction here, these things are almost a must that I want to see somehow implemented into the next Subnautica game. So they have a couple different ideas for him here. They obviously all have, you know, a mouth with some claws here, but the predator will fire bubble rings of volatile volcanic gases that explode on contact or after a set amount of time, based off of the rings that we've seen by like whales and dolphins, because they're able to do that in the actual ocean. So it's obviously inspired by them, but this one explodes, which is awesome. And then I'm not sure if this design is they can do both, or if they were just playing around with different ideas for this type of predator. But this one's attack shows it as an electrical attack with a proboscis that shoots out of its mouth and will zap you like a taser, which is also pretty cool. I wouldn't mind seeing both of these maybe implemented in different locations. So like basically subspecies, you'll have some that blow out these explosive bubbles and other ones that can basically taser you in the ocean, which is never a good thing. This one could definitely be interesting, obviously, unless they're planning on including rapid pressure change and like nitrogen sickness in the next Subnautica game, which I highly doubt due to the fact that they don't have it in the previous two. I don't think that they would want to add something like that into the next one, seeing as we're used to having like air bladders and things that'll take us from super deep up to the surface, where we don't have to worry about pressure changes as if we were real scuba divers. But where I could see this still working is you have them populate an area that's under a jet stream that goes to very hostile locations. And what they will do is they'll grab the player and lift them up to the surface, and as they're going directly up, it'll throw them into one of those jet streams that'll just shoot them off somewhere else. That could be a very interesting way to still implement these without having to worry about having to add nitrogen sickness and that type of gameplay feature in, but still able to use these ascender worms as a way to just like, oh, you're coming close to my house? Well, you're out of here. And they literally just eject you into a completely different biome, maybe even one that's very hostile, or even just, you know, far away from their home that they're trying to defend. And then here you have a hostile organism that uses its elastic, sticky tentacles to get about, and attached to the player with explosive consequences. But it seems like these could be essentially a replacement for like the crash fish. It shows kind of the background here in the below zero fabricator caverns, or whatever it is that they're called. But I could see these essentially just being a different version of the crash fish as a thing you must watch out for, because they'll try and like latch onto you and then explode. Whereas the crash fish just swam at you and exploded. But I like the design of this one. I think it looks really cool. It looks dangerous. Nice little spiky ball that just blows up in your face if you get too close. The other one here, I don't know, I couldn't find if this was actually in below zero or not, but it's a very cool design. That it's an ambush predator that looks like something very spider-like, that essentially has its own little crystalline web that act as tripwires. I think the second attack variety that they chose here would be a lot more terrifying. Attack number one, basically it would stab into you and pull you to them, whereas I think having this creepy looking spider thing, if you accidentally touch one of the tentacles, to just like shoot out directly into your face, much more terrifying. Me personally, if they do implement a creature like this, I say go for attack B, but let me know what you think below, which one of these attacks actually would be more terrifying to you. Would you want to be pulled into this creature, or have this creature leap out of its home directly into your face? Here we have a couple other cool creature concepts. Just various feeder type things. So like this one, it seems like that the internal flagella provides propulsion, which means this thing would be like spinning and propulsing the gelatinous jellyfish-like creature along. I think it's pretty cool looking. This one is essentially a jellyfish that has a protective ice shell. So you'll see them swimming through the water with their ice ball, and if they get put in danger, they'll actually retract their head into the ice and seal it, but then they'll start sinking because they can't swim without the top out. It would definitely be cool to see a bunch of these swimming around, and then as you swim by, or if something swims too close to them, you watch them retract and just start sinking back down until they pop back out. This one over here seems like it's a similar design to the jellyfish, but instead of just like a mushroom, it's just kind of like a spiral thing. I think the mushroom would be a little cooler because you can actually make it like a jellyfish, whereas this one's neutrally buoyant, which means they would just kind of like float around. Down here, this one's gross, very gross. So it's a fish swimming around, and it can actually detach this rope hanging off the back of it, and it can either explode or a blinding light kind of as a distraction to flashbang you. That's an interesting idea. It seems kind of gross. You'd be swimming up behind one of these things and it just shoots out its little tail at you, but definitely an interesting creature design. And then this one is similar to these other feeder things that can retract, but this one essentially would attract into a perfectly spherical shell in a ball. I think it's kind of a cool idea, especially if they were to somehow kind of implement these with the architect in some way, or maybe like built by the architects or engineered by the architects to kind of sample the waters in different locations. So like they can close up into the orb, and then the orbs will be called back or something like that. But they would basically just like float out, and they would open up to take a sample of the water. Could be pretty cool. Give them some green architect type design on the ball, and those could be pretty cool. Here we have the sand spear, which essentially attacks the same way that the sand shark does by burrowing itself in. This one's a lot more squid-like and menacing looking, and I kind of like it. You can see down here in this picture, you know, they'll wiggle themselves into the ground with just their eyeballs essentially sticking out, and if you get too close, they basically launch themselves at you like a missile. I think this seems way more terrifying than the sand sharks, and should definitely be designed and implemented in hopefully the next Subnautica game, but a future Subnautica game for sure. This one is just a series of rainbow bugs. We don't see a whole lot of bug-like creatures from my recollection, mostly fish, things like that. I like the designs and colors of these rainbow bugs, but what purpose they would serve, I don't know. Maybe you could collect them. Like maybe these are actually found on land. You can collect them and in your base. Whereas like we have the aquarium, you have one that has basically like a tree in it. You collect these bugs, throw them on the tree, and you can have just like a indoor tree biome thing that is covered in all colors of rainbow bugs. That could be a pretty cool idea. This one's just a weird fish with like a proboscis. Main thing about it is like when it's startled, it swims off in an arc, leaving like these blue glowing spheres behind it. I feel like the idea of like the blue spheres either came from like the gaseopods, leaving the green pee bubbles behind, but it could be kind of cool to see them implement something similar as just like ways that the fish in the environment protect themselves from predators. But it's definitely a weird looking fish with the proboscis. I could see them maybe, you know, swimming up to holes in the rocks and stuff like that, sticking those in there, and if you startle them, then they shoot off and leave glowing spheres behind. We actually have two varieties of this predator here. This one is the electrogami. So when it opens up to attack, it's essentially like a stun gun or a taser with an electrical attack. So it'll latch onto something and it'll zap you. And then here is a unique one that creates sonic shockwaves that are powerful enough to push players and their vehicles backwards. And it's called the Shock Star. This one could be very interesting to deal with if they're like blocking you from going somewhere and we have to figure out some way to get past them. but I think I like the electric one better just because it can actually like attack or maybe like EMP your vehicle if one or two latch onto it. Whereas this one's basically just saying like you swim too close, it pushes you back. So I definitely like the Electrogami a little bit more than the Shock Star personally, but they're both pretty cool designed starfish type creatures. One thing that's interesting here is this one, C, not talking about the color, but the shape of it looks a lot like some of those that we saw in the actual released screenshot. So this may actually tell us that they are using some of these fish designs and concept designs. Personally, out of these here, I like this one. Like this eyeball that'd be able to just like float back and forth with the four fins. I think that's a pretty cool design, but all of these are very unique little fish. And I'm sure, especially since we've seen something that kind of already looks similar to this in the one official screenshot, we definitely might see some more of these making a play. So they've also designed this, and I don't think it's in any of the games, but it's called Rot Nest. Rot Nest is essentially like a parasite that takes over the pre-existing creatures. Other than missing the fin on the top, this one kind of reminds me of the thing we've seen in the one screenshot so far, the fish itself. And so maybe that they do have designs to implement Rot Nest in Subnautica 2. But essentially that prey are infected when exploding spore pods attack them as they swim near a corpse. The infection makes the host deranged, and they will attack any nearby animals, releasing jet-propelled spore pods from cysts growing on their flesh. The host eventually dies. The drifting corpse is slowly digested by the Rot Nest, which will launch spore pods at any creature foolish enough to investigate. The complex biochemicals in the spore pods have medical and weaponry applications if they can be captured before exploding. As the Rot Nest is infecting the corpse, and it's got these tentacles which will route oxygen to the Rot Nest. I think this is actually a really cool idea, and it essentially is zombie fish. You have this parasite, very similar to The Last of Us, where it's a fungus that takes over, controls the host, and spreads itself.
Burrowing into our brains and taking control, billions of puppets permanently fixed on one unifying goal: to spread the infection by any means necessary.
I think that could be a very cool idea to bring in. It could even play a very large part of something that we have to do story-wise on the planet of Subnautica 2, where Rot Nest is infested. Maybe the ancients were trying to contain the Rot Nest. It got out, very similar to Subnautica 1 with the Cara bacterium, but this time it essentially creates like a horde of zombie fish that we are gonna have to try and get around. And maybe the further on you go in the game and the more steps you complete getting towards the end, that you actually start seeing the Rot Nest spread over more fish in the ecosystem, so it becomes more and more hostile as the game progresses, until you can figure out a cure to sort of kind of knock back the infection. I think that could be an interesting idea. My only complaint with that quick idea that I came up with is that it's very similar to the story of Subnautica 1 being the Cara bacteria kind of taking over the planet and them trying to quarantine it. But I'm sure with the time that they've had to work on the game, they could come up with a better story arc than what I just came up with off the top of my head. But to me, it sounds like a pretty cool idea. Here's some more examples of Rot Nest, a couple different varieties that they were working on. And you can see that the Rot Nest will take over other creatures. So it's not just like, oh, Rot Nest is a creature. The Rot Nest is a parasite that'll turn creatures essentially into zombies. These ones are kind of hard to see just because they're like quick sketches over here, but it seems like a very cool idea where it's more frog-like. We've seen a lot of fish. We've seen a lot of like snake type, like the leviathans are all typically snake-like. We have whales and big things. We don't have a whole lot of like frogs, things that would actually be like swimming at you. Personally, I like the one that has multiple feet and maybe can just like launch itself at you. We'll have to see if they choose to implement any kind of creatures like this one, or if they're going to stick mostly with just like typical fish or crab type things. But having some frog legs deep sea sound pretty good to me.
What the?
Here we can see some more where they're really playing with like basically a floating eyeball in the sea. And then you also have some just like completely nightmare fuel fish where their mouths open up like a banana peel almost. And I think that would definitely cause some terrors in the deep. One of these things starts coming after your face. This is another example of where they like to play around with the floating eyeball type situation. They even have an idea where one of them is like an unhatched baby version of something encased by the other fish that is the eye for the other fish, and that they actually are in a symbiotic relationship. I think that could be an interesting design, having like basically a floating egg with a larva in it looking thing, kind of just swimming around, would be an interesting fish design. I think this is so freaking cute that one of the original plans for the sea monkeys is basically a miniature crab squid. Pygmy crab squid. Or grab squid. You can see they're still playing with the idea. I think this is adorable. It would have been awesome to see a bunch of pygmy crab squids that are attracted to your electronical devices. I doubt we're going to see that in Subnautica 2 just because we're on a completely different planet. So we're not really going to have crab squids, but I think this would have been really cool if they actually went forward with it. Here we have a couple more these remind me of sea turtles, just the way that they look like they're swimming. I'm assuming those fins flap. They also call these one discuses because they're round. But you can see they're kind of playing with either stock eyes on them or putting like a big eye. I have a feeling we're probably going to see some creatures like this in Subnautica 2. That are either more turtle-like, a couple of other options, mostly just different colors, one's even transparent, and kind of how they look from the top, which still does give them that sea turtle look. And then here they're playing with either like completely no eyes up here. This one looks like it is if you were to combine a earth crab with a sea turtle, just cut off all of its legs, give it 2 fins, and you got crab eyes and crab color. And then down here, they're trying to see different number of eyes to work with. I actually kind of like these eye stalks here for these creatures and think that could be interesting. I like how this one, when they colored it, actually just looks like the same colors of a crab that we're used to seeing here. I do believe we're going to see, and it's just a hunch, obviously I'm not going off anything, but something like this could definitely be implemented in the next Subnautica game. This is what they call like the Congress worm, and essentially it's a bunch of small swimming creatures that all connect together and swim like one big snake. But if they are threatened or they want to attack, they can actually break into a bunch of small ones and swarm. I think that's actually a pretty cool idea, because as the player is going to swim up and be like, oh, like there's like a probably about the size of like a crab squid or something, not crab squid, but crab snake coming after you, and you're like, oh, I'm not too worried about it, and then it all of a sudden splits into like 10 small things that all start coming at you from different angles, and you'd have to hightail it out of there pretty quick. I definitely think that's something they can implement in Subnautica 2 and make it pretty cool looking. And this here's bonus. For those of you that don't know, the cute and adorable cuttlefish from Subnautica was originally designed to be the crash fish.
What the dog doing?
The original design for these things was that they would be the ones coming out of a hole and explode. However, they were too cute. They couldn't convince themselves to make them explode, so then instead they made the crash fish, but they kept the cuttlefish as, you know, the companion that you can find in Subnautica. However, could you just imagine playing through Subnautica with a large number of these things constantly popping out and trying to explode in your face? It would have been great. This here is just a cool example of a type of crab lobster thing that essentially is feeding off these hydrothermal vents. And apparently, like, the original plan for these things, because they're feeding off the vents, is that they would be a source of sulfur for the player. I definitely think we are going to see a lot of crab creatures in Subnautica 2. While we are also going to have a lot of fish and things like that, I do feel like there's going to be a lot more crabs than we got previously. So something like this could definitely still make a return. What I like about this picture and this creature in particular is it gives me the, hey, look, I'm cute, come up and say hi type of creature that is hiding hostile intent. So even if it's not this exact design that we see in Subnautica 2. I do have a feeling that they're going to try and play that game with the players a lot more, where you might see something cute or it seems innocuous. You might see something cute or like a valuable resource or something like that that is actually just going to be bait for something that's going to try and attack you. Like, I love the idea of this thing. He's just staring at you, looks all cute and happy. So you come up because you want to see him. You want to scan him. You want to know what's going on with your little buddy. And then he's got a stinger waiting to whoosh, latch out at you. With the popularity of this image and it having been out for a while, I doubt if they do something like this that it's going to be this exact same design. I feel like they're going to change it up so that players coming into Subnautica 2 won't just see that thing and immediately be like, oh, I know that thing's dangerous. I've seen the concept art for it. So when you're playing Subnautica 2, keep your eyes peeled and don't be fooled. You're in hostile waters. In this one, we have a couple of interesting things to look at as far as creatures are concerned. We have this weird V-shaped thing here, and it looks like the player is actually holding on to the fin here, which means it could be, these are probably jets, meaning this is probably the back of the creature swimming this way. The player's holding on and using them to kind of get around. So it's hard to tell like what they were really thinking with this, if it's just a ray and like these flap, or if it is just something that is V-shaped, or if it's more like a bird and it's got like a head that sticks out the front. But definitely an interesting silhouette, and especially seeing the player interact with it and being able to like ride with it reminds me of the giant whale things from Below Zero, but obviously much smaller and deeper. And then over here, I like this dude. This dude is pretty cool. You got, I'm assuming these are the eyeballs, but I don't see any mouths or anything, so I'm not sure exactly what these things are, but I do think that's a pretty cool design for a fish here. Now these definitely should be implemented in Subnautica 2. Not sure which one of these is actually my favorite. They're all kind of cool looking, but imagine seeing one of these things cutting through the water at high speed or something like that. Like, that would be terrifying if they're hostile, but I could also just see them being kind of like a whale shark, where they're not going to be hostile to the player. They just kind of swim around, open their mouths, and feed off of plankton and things, and mostly harmless. But reefbacks were harmless, and they terrified me on my first playthrough. Sounds, everything coming from them, I did not want to get close. But I like this design, how it's like a ray, but it's vertical and not flat as it's moving through the water. Could be a very cool piece to add in Subnautica 2, and I have a feeling we are probably going to see something at least similar to these large, essentially blades swimming through the ocean. Here we have an early design for some kind of weird creature that has like these mandibles that can either, they have two designs here, so these ones can actually like form like a battering ram and ram the player or vehicles, whereas this design almost flips them a little bit and makes them pinchers, so it can like hold things in place while it eats. I'm not actually sure which one I prefer. Maybe it could be an interesting, like the males of the species have the pinchers and the females have the battering ram or something, so that way you could still kind of implement both of them together on the same planet. Would be a very interesting way of doing it. I don't think we really have anything that's really like male-female split in Subnautica as far as the species are concerned, at least not anything that I remember. The closest thing would be just the similarity between like the sea dragons and the sea emperors. If it was arguable that those are similar species or not, it's hard to say, but nothing in the PDAs or anything like that has ever insinuated that they are the same species. This image here actually gives us a couple of fish together. This one, I don't know what's going on down here, but I'm all for it. This thing looks gross, and just imagine seeing these things just swimming past while you're trying to do your business down in the ocean. It would definitely make you feel uncomfortable. But this one reminds me of a flea. So my thoughts for this one, that they are basically a sea flea, but the reason they're so large is because that they actually attach themselves onto leviathans and other large creatures as kind of a pest. And I think that could be a very cool way to take this design here and implement it where you have some sort of very large leviathan creature that also carries with them these fleas that can be hostile to the player as well. That could be pretty cool. Here we have, I don't know what these are, to be completely honest. Creepy. I don't like how stick-like the legs, or finger-like, I should say, the legs look. They look like they're trying to be cute, but would rip your face off if you're not careful. So I'm all for them working on this design and basically making these weird squid fingers that try and come after the player or just swim around even. They don't even have to be hostile necessarily. But based off of that size, if that's size to the player, I'm guessing they're hostile. Here's a picture of some of those things actually like moving around, and it does look like they were intended to attach to the vehicle or the player as they're going through. So definitely hostile, definitely creepy looking. And this one we have a giant dinosaur water bear. So water bears are very microscopic organisms. If you haven't heard of them before, I'll show you one now. I think tardigrades are what they're actually called, and they're extremophiles to a very extreme degree. They've survived all sorts of insane conditions that humans have tested them through, including the vacuum of space, and they have survived. So this just looks like a giant tardigrade to me. I like this. It kind of reminds me of a dinosaur. I think Subnautica should definitely take some liberties from dinosaurs as well. Like the spikes on the tail over here remind me of like a Stegosaurus. And I think taking inspiration from dinosaurs as well as fish and things like that could give you some really cool creature ideas. Make them feel very prehistoric. Here is another example of grabby creatures. We've seen already the tentacles and other things where it looks like they want to grab hold of the player and prevent him from swimming. And so here you have like these floating flower pod bodies up here, and the creature itself can extend out. Looks like they try and pick things up off of the seafloor and scavenge for food, but you can also see they can definitely grab the player as they swim by. I hope we see a lot of these like tentacle type things in Subnautica 2. Even if they don't do a whole lot of damage to the player, can maybe make it harder to reach the surface or traverse a point if you're not careful, because they will grab you and like hold you and try and prevent you from going places that you're actually trying to go to. So I definitely like the design of these things because they look like a hand, but then when you get close, like you can see the eyes. I don't really see a mouth. I'm assuming there would be a mouth here, but I don't know. This whole thing could be a mouth. It may grab something it wants and pull it inside and digest them in there. And now we move on to leviathans and other large creatures. This one is one I am assuming we are going to get something similar to this in Subnautica 2. So here it's like a lighthouse turtle, lantern turtle. Essentially it is a reefback sized creature with large glowing bulbs on the top of it to provide light. But this one is obviously designed to look more turtle-like, but we don't have enough turtles in Subnautica. So please, if you are listening, make more turtles. Make more turtles.
I like turtles.
Here you can see some different concepts that they used for, I think it's the Shadow Leviathan or something like that in Below Zero. You can see some of the iterations that they went for. We have quite a bit actually where you can see they tried different mouths, they tried different number of claws. Personally, I really like these type of faces on this thing. It's very orca whale-esque, but you can see as they were kind of like working through and trying to design this creature, some of the things that they pay attention to, like they wanted the giant bioluminescent mouth that is creepy looking and a very interesting shape for the head with like a crest. So we can expect to see on the Leviathans that we get in Subnautica 2, at least some of them that are bioluminescent. We've had some bioluminescence in both games so far, and that's not going to change for Subnautica 2. So I'm assuming that you can expect them to use the bioluminescence to accent any of the creatures that we see in Subnautica 2, much like we already have in the first ones. You can tell in these images that they had a completely different like head shape in mind, but they still had that bioluminescent mouth that they were working around for this one as they were kind of like piecing this thing together. They even attempted a couple different mouth variants on the thing. You can see that they definitely like to play around with swapping out different things to find the silhouette and the look that they're searching for something. So you can almost guarantee that even if some of the creatures we've looked at so far don't one for one make it into Subnautica 2, that a lot of the reoccurring design elements that we've kind of seen throughout will definitely make their way into the next one for sure. Here he just kind of looks like a puppy sitting on a rock, and then obviously this is the more finalized version as far as I'm aware, or at least closer to finalized version. And so you can see the pieces that they've taken, what they liked from their previous concept designs, and kind of what they ended up piecing together to make this monstrosity. Here were a couple more examples of the alternate mouth version that they were working on here. Instead of the one that's kind of like on the throat chest area, this is when it actually had a jaw. And to be honest, to me, this seems much more terrifying. I'm hoping that they will take this facial structure that they've kind of worked on here and put it into a new Leviathan for Subnautica 2, because that's creepy as hell, and I would not want that thing swimming after me. Here are a couple more concept views of a jaw-like mouth, like the one we were just looking at. These are also pretty creepy. I like the head plate, and the ones we just saw a little bit better, but overall still a cool design that I would like to see a Leviathan in Subnautica 2 with the more reptilian mouth, jaw, dinosaur looking thing with razor sharp teeth. I want to see something that tries to, you know, straight up use its mouth to break, like bite hold and break the sea moth. Because this here is an example of how it would work with the spike arms that we saw in the other one, where essentially it's got the two on the side and it's got a hidden midline claw along the chest, and that it would grab it and just shove it into the mouth. Honestly, this seems like it'd be a lot, like, I mean, super terrifying if your sea moth were to get grabbed and just force down the bioluminescent gaping maw of whatever the creature is. So even though essentially this creature was reworked into the Shadow Leviathan, as far as my understanding, I do hope that they still take some of these ideas into some of the Leviathans for Subnautica 2, because I think they really give you a creepy and cool design using the elements just a slightly different way than what they ended up going with. Because here you can see it like swimming streamlined with everything tucked in, and then another one where it kind of flares out. Again, I think that is a pretty cool silhouette. I feel like maybe they thought it was too close to the Reaper with the four arms grabbing you, and so they kind of wanted to go a different route and give it a lot more fingers. But personally, I really like this design. I wouldn't want it one for one over, because it would look too much like the Shadow Leviathan. You can definitely work on changing the colors and things like that, but I do like this overly large tooth-filled maw that is just trying to literally swallow you whole. And then here's just a couple more of this style that they were working on. You can see it like swimming and opening its mouth. Personally like the big toothy maw better, but this one also has kind of a unique feel to it. This is one that I would not be surprised if we see something very similar to this in Subnautica 2, but something that's like a giant sea slug that mostly crawls around on the sea floor. Definitely an interesting design for a large creature. Most of the ones we see are swimming or they have legs walking around. It would definitely be interesting to see one that is still snake-like or slug-like, but that essentially like crawls along the ground. This is also a very interesting design for a creature that they have called the gardener eel. And so essentially it can go on land and it retracts this membrane. It essentially has a tree that it keeps inside of it. So when it's on land, it can photosynthesize. It'll have the tree photosynthesize, give it energy, but when it needs more energy, it'll essentially swallow the tree again, and it can hunt for fish. It's definitely unique. We also have this monstrosity. I don't know what the idea was for this one. You can tell it still has giant tentacles on the underside of it, but it seems like it was buried in the sand based on this crevice here. And I don't know if it's hostile or friendly, but this dude is staring down fate right now for sure. I like the size of this thing. Hopefully we will get something similar to this one. Like I said, we've seen a lot of the ones that are going to be like swimming through the water most of the time, but having kind of the ones like this that you might see on the sea floor could be a very interesting twist to some of the Leviathans. This guy gives me an old wise man feel just by looking at his face, and so I'm assuming it's not hostile, but you never know in Subnautica land, do you? This one here is a very interesting pterodactyl looking whale thing. I like the shape of it. I think it's very cool looking. Seems like it, like I said, it's like a cross between a whale and a pterodactyl in the water. I'm a-okay with that. It's got a very strong silhouette and a shape. I think this thing would look very cool gliding through the ocean, even if it's not hostile or anything, especially with like the lights and bioluminescence underneath. I think this thing would look spectacular in Unreal Engine 5 swimming through the ocean. Here we have an example of a worm. They have two varieties of it. So this one has like a pointy spearhead, but it looks very odd. I like it, but it looks odd. I don't know how that's like a creature. So you can tell in this version of it, they decided just to give it like a mouth, like a, what are those things called? Lamprey, like a lamprey eel. And I think that looks pretty cool. And it could also be cool to see this thing attached to an even larger creature like a lamprey would. Maybe they don't do a whole lot of harm to the player or anything, but you can definitely see them swimming around and basically trying to latch onto bigger things as their food source. Here we have a purple hermit crab looking thing. Like I said, we know for a fact we have in the one released screenshot, we have like a giant hermit crab looking thing. So I have a feeling even if this exact design for it isn't implemented, that we are going to see some form of shelled crab in Subnautica 2. But I do like the way this thing looks, like how it's kind of purple and translucent through the body. It's got these monstrosity of British looking teeth here.
Well, Tomator hasn't always been this glam. I was a drab little crab once.
I could just see this thing being in a cave deep down in the depths, and you go down to try and get something, and he's like, my treasures! Looking forward to seeing what route they go with some of the crab designs that they're more than likely going to have in Subnautica 2. Here we have another example of them playing with the mouth and fin shapes of a large creature. This one to me looks more anglerfish jaw, like where the lower jaw kind of underbite, overbite, whatever it's called, underbite that sticks out. This one they kind of gave it pinchers again. Personally, I like the shape of this variant a little bit more than that mouth in particular, but I do feel like we're probably going to get a lot more like deep sea angler fish inspiration as well in this one. I feel like they're going to try and amp up the creepy factor of a lot of things, especially as we go deeper. maybe not so much in the shallows. I have a feeling they're really gonna draw in on some of these creepier creatures for Subnautica 2. Here's another example of something. This is like a combination of the anglerfish and the crab, because you have its little like light doohickey, little dangly bit, but at the same time it's clearly crab-esque. Like I said, we've seen the crabs kind of repeated, and I do have a feeling that we're going to get a fair amount of crab creatures in Subnautica 2. And then of course you've got the four-legged Cthulhu horse that lives down in the deep. I really like this design because it's not like other designs that we've seen so far for creatures. And when it comes to going to a new planet and them having to design new creatures, pulling inspiration from things like this that are a lot different from what we've seen so far is definitely a good place to start. And here we have an example of a shark that oddly looks very reminiscent to the one we've seen in the screenshot before. Obviously that one has a bigger dorsal fin and everything, but it does tell me that they are still reworking a lot of these old concepts into new creatures for the next game. Did you know that everyone's favorite penguins, this was the original concept? Why didn't they go with this? Look at this thing. It looks like a doofus. I love him. This was another option we could have had. Personally, I like this little dude down here. He goes Sid the Sloth real hard.
Why? Doesn't anyone love me? Isn't there anyone who cares about Sid the Sloth?
So we could definitely see them taking, if we do have an Arctic area in the new Subnautica, maybe redesigning or taking some of these like more out there penguin designs that don't match the one that they ended up using, and we could actually get to see something like this waddling around, or even this Sid the Sloth over here. They look different enough from the penguins from Below Zero that they can still be used without it being like, oh, why are those penguins also on this planet type of situation. We also have a couple of examples. So these were from Below Zero. I can still see them being implemented in or brought in through some modifications. Obviously they're just like a simple sketch, so there's not a whole lot to really go off of. But this one is a huge, vicious, pentamerically symmetrical, so it's got 5 equal sides, predator, stalking the pack ice both above and beneath the waves with its 5 hungry tentacle mouths. So essentially these arms are also its mouths. I could definitely see them reworking something like this in here, not necessarily for the ice zone, but just having something like this built up for Subnautica 2, and it would be pretty interesting if I'm being 100% honest. And then we also have an amphibious predator with jaws formed from modified forelimbs, an unstoppable force, avoid. Again, it's hard to tell, so it looks like this arm kind of like curls up in front of its face, and it kind of uses them like its upper jaw, and that seems like a pretty cool concept that they could definitely take in and still use to create some sort of very creepy looking amphibian. Like I said, we don't have enough amphibians. Most of the things are like fish and snake-like fish and stuff like that, so I'm all for any way that they can kind of bring in more frogs, amphibians, and like reptiles like turtles into Subnautica 2 moving forward. This one here is one of my favorites that I've come across. It's essentially a large ice water dragon. We do have several images of this one, so this one you get to see a nice big side profile of it looking like just like a dragon swimming through the water. Definitely could use more dragons. Dragons are always cool. Slap anything dragon related in there, make it fit with the environment, and you're good to go. In this variation, they have more fins, which I'm not against, but I think I like just like the simple, make the fins look like wings of dragon, and you're pretty much set with this one. Here is a frontal view, like I said, which is like the 4 fins next to a sea moth. You can kind of see the relative size of it. This thing looks terrifying, and I would love to see this creature implemented in some way into Subnautica 2 for sure. Watching this thing just like slide through, and there are a couple slides on here. I will show you where it has some different attack like animations and ideas for it. I think this could be a very cool hostile creature that you do not want to piss off while going through the waters. Here's an example of that dragon, them kind of like workshopping eyeballs. They seem like they put a lot of thought and work into this frost dragon or frost worm that I have a feeling that they are planning on still using it. I don't feel like they would have put this much work into creating it only to say, nah, we don't want to use that at all. So I definitely feel like they're going to take inspiration from this dragon-like creature in Subnautica 2, and we're going to see something very similar in the very least. Because here you can see they have like a couple different attack ideas for it. So the first one here is missile symbiotes that grow in the cranial chamber and are launched at the player and explode. If captured, valuable chemicals can be harvested. To me, that kind of sounds very similar to that rot, whatever it was that we were talking about earlier, where like it would shoot the rot missiles out. So I could honestly see if they were planning on implementing that they could make essentially this dragon thing be the rot queen basically, and that would be very sick. That would be very cool looking. Because the other idea that they worked with was a brine ice breath, where it could basically freeze vehicles or players and eat them. Here's a couple of other ideas that they worked where it was shooting either like a brine missile or like blobs, and then that your vehicle would essentially be encased in ice while it was free to do whatever it wanted. But with this much thought and planning going into just one creature, they have to use it. I don't see them just completely ignoring it, being like, we don't really need it. This is one of those that I feel very strongly that we are going to see something along these lines in the future, and I am 100% for it. This is one of the coolest creatures that I've seen that they've designed so far, and I would really love to see it in-game for Subnautica 2. I know that was a lot of concept art that we made our way through, but I do think if you take a lot of the different themes and things that we've come across throughout these images and use them, we can kind of get an image of what we may expect to see in Subnautica 2. Don't forget to check out the link tree in the description, and on the store page in the link tree you can find a link to w.gg where you can get your zero sugar, zero filler energy alternative, and you can save 10% by using those links on that store page or by using code Pedigreedmoth at checkout. So head over to w.gg and why don't you check out Big Energy Tears Blue Raspberry. It's my favorite flavor I've tried so far. It's absolutely delicious. And check out their shakers. They've got some awesome shakers. This is the one I got because I like purple and she's cute. So get yourself one today and you will save 10% at checkout. Side note, they do have their cans if they are still in stock. They're 12-pack of cans. The 10% code does not work for those because they are just now starting their can production and it's a limited run. But everything else in your order with code Pedigreedmoth at checkout or by using the links, you will get 10% off. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And why don't you check out this video over here? I think you'll enjoy it. And I'll see you next time. Bye!